Greetings and salutations, everyone, and welcome to, depending on wherever you may live and however you look at it, an early morning or middle of the night bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It doesn't cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, folks, they really do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into this middle of the night or early morning bonus upload, shall we? Today's first experience. To start off, I work as a camp counselor during the summer. Last year, or summer, I had always heard of this out-tripping area that was 3 Creek Crossing downstream from where we would always hang out or take campers to cool off on hot summer days. This out-tripping spot was pretty famous due to a supposed abandoned meth lab trailer, which had an old porcelain bathtub pretty close by with some burnt-up clothes inside of it. About a 5-minute hike deeper into the woods, there's this old tag-along trailer covered in bullet holes. It just screams meth lab. Now, as the adventurous person that I am, I had been meaning to go and explore this area since last summer, which unfortunately did not happen. Though different events occurred last summer, which I will explain, none of this has helped with this adventure I had always been meaning to go on. That is, up until this summer. Please bear with me. I'll try my best to explain the list of occurrences I've experienced in the simplest way possible. Okay, here goes nothing. Let me explain some minor things first. The camp is based off of an old abandoned ranger station deep in the woods, and I don't want to expose too much about the camp and make obvious its location, so I won't say too much about that. The old ranger supposedly died in the station over 100 years ago and now haunts the camp, although he's considered to be friendly and sometimes just likes having his presence known. He protects the camp as any forest ranger nowadays would. There's official papers confirming this ranger was real, or so I've been told. I've never seen them. Our camp director is a very spiritual person. They've smudged just about every place possible, and have brought countless priests to bless the camp. They've worked very hard to get the camp to the level of safety it is at now. They have my respect. Every week we have an opening and closing campfire. This place is sacred and one of the most special areas of the camp. It emits nothing but safe energy. It feels like an air bubble or a dome of safety. This will be important later. Last summer, me being stupid, myself and 3 others played with a Ouija board. It took a while, but something eventually got through to us. It said stuff like it wanted to kill one of the boys playing on the Ouija board with us. We were safe because it could not come on to camp, and would mostly only respond to me. When I asked if it liked me, it responded with 666. I still don't understand what that means. Across the camp is an area. I'll give it a nickname, again not to expose the location, and we'll call it Grassland Grove Road. Over the years, stories have built up about the Grassland Ghost, which starts with a man who hiked the area of the grasslands before there were trails set in the place. The hiker had gotten lost off-road and eventually died. Because this was such a lonely and terrible death, its ghost is very angry and upset and miserable, and gives off bad energy. Now, of course, when people go off into the woods at night for a run or out for trips, and freaky stuff happens. A lot of it gets blamed on the Grassland Ghost. It could just be animals and creaky trees making noises, or your mind playing tricks on you, because again, no one knows what's out in the deep dark woods. But others say it is the grassland ghost, as it likes to feed off of your nervous and scared energy. I personally believe the latter due to my own experiences. Okay, now time for the real experience. About midway through the summer, I was working in the kitchen with one of my good friends. This week, somewhere in the middle, we finished washing the dishes from the earlier lunchtime meal and had about 3 hours to kill before we had to be back at 4 to start prepping for dinner. And then an idea popped into my head. I asked my friend if they wanted to go to the famous meth lab out tripping spot, as I had mentioned earlier. They agreed. However, neither of us knew how to get there. No one ever visited the spot anymore due to the government weather station and oil pipeline placed up nearby, and also due to its generalized creepiness. However, I'd been given directions by an older worker who had been there many years back. I was warned not to go, and due to my curiosity, I did not care. I did get scared easily, but that didn't stop me, as I've always been intrigued by the paranormal or abandoned stuff. So we grabbed some bear spray, a backpack, our water bottles, and set off down towards the everyday used creek. 3 creek crossing later, we were a little lost. I was looking for the pathway for this place until I finally spotted it not too far away. We hiked up to the old path and made our way through the trees. Next, we came into a clearing that looked like it had been used to drive through with a truck many years ago. Or maybe not too long ago, I'm not sure. All I could tell was that it was not in recent use. We kept trekking on and found the government weather station through the field. The truck tracks kept going, and I knew this was the right way. At the end of the field, the trees started up again and grew up in front of a tucked pathway. There's no way a vehicle would have been able to go past this area, since the trees were blocking it out. This was at the area that things began to get creepy and eerie. Things became silent, the grass taller, and the barbed wire fence next to us old and out of use. At least, that's what we thought. My friend had been playing music through their speaker to help with the journey and keep our spirits up. We kept walking down the path. The best way I can describe it is where there's an electrical tower that runs through the woods and all of the trees have been cleared up in a straight line and pathway, if that makes sense. But this was smaller and closer together, just slightly bigger than the width of a truck. Throughout this certain part of the walk, it was very offsetting, and only got worse as you got deeper into the bush. The only energy I got from this was something bad, but us being stupid teens, we pushed on. We reached the end of the trucking pathway and came to what I would call an extremely small ridge. Almost nearly in front of you, the pathway continued downward, though it was not extremely obvious to see. If you looked to your right, another pathway started to go that way. I walked closer to the ridge to get a nice view. It was here I noticed some extremely old patches of blue ground tarp. Looking around, we saw chopped up pieces of wood and a clearing. My friend just wanted to head back to the camp, and being a bit nervous, stayed put about 10 feet behind me. In this clearing was a very obvious fire pit with charcoal and large stones all around it. I touched the pit and could tell it had been used not too long ago, maybe at least within the past week. Unfortunately, my friend and I were running out of time to explore, and we had to turn around and head back to our kitchen duties. As we stepped back into camp and finally felt safe, my friend told me something eerie. When we reached the eerie part of the pathway just after the field, they heard a man's voice yelling or calling out after us, or whatever you want to call it. They just ignored it and turned her music up. I didn't hear a thing. However, I was not content with this search and I needed more answers, and vowed to return later that night. Nighttime fell and all of the campers were asleep, and it was now technically the camp workers' free time, except for those monitoring the kids. Now the woods were much scarier at night, and we wanted to bring more people with us this time. Not a big group and not a small group, just enough for an adventure. 4 people seemed like a good number. We invited another person working in the kitchen with us, as well as someone who had kids this week. I trusted this boy very much, and despite his young age, he had been around a bit more in life than the rest of us had. After telling the new 2 about our earlier adventure and how we hadn't found much else, we set off in search of finding whatever was beyond where we stopped. We continued back where the pathway split up. The one going downward was not prominent and obvious at the time, so we went and headed off on the path that went right. The path got smaller and smaller as we kept going. Off to the side were many old set-up shelter bases called lean-tos, just the bases, as in the skeleton or frame, many of them. We kept going, thinking we were on the right path. It wasn't as eerie as the start of the pathway by the field, but it was still eerie. The pathway eventually led to a dead end, as it just turned into something that looked like a game trail and literally disappeared. We turned around and headed back to the start, as in where the old fire pit was and where the pathways forked. We went down the not-so-obvious downward path, and that led us to success. After 5 minutes of walking through some broken trees that gave off Blair Witch vibes, we finally reached the tag-along trailer and got excited due to our success, and approached it to explore. It was quite old, and had been completely obliterated with bullet holes. The exit holes were huge on the other side, and had literally gun practice target sheet taped onto it. Makes you wonder how it got there, why, and how. On the inside was one of those gray foldable tables that you would find at a party to play cup pong on. Easing up our tension, we also found a little frog, irrelevant. Thinking we hadn't found the bathtub and meth lab yet, we continued on. We went around fallen trees and crossed a small creek and found a prominent but extremely old-looking dirt trail past this. After 10 steps on this path, we looked at our watches and it was 10 p.m. Though we had until 11 to explore, we decided to be safe and turn around and head back to the camp before it got super dark, as none of us wanted to be out in the woods that late at night with whatever was out there. This was the furthest I've ever been out. I didn't go back to that certain point ever again. Nothing exactly scary happened on this trip, but it was good to explore. During the summer, there's 8 weeks that a camper can come. This occurred during week 4, the last week of July. We're going to fast forward to week 8, the last week of the summer. Since then, I had been curious about that spot and what lies beyond it. I didn't receive another chance to go back as the days began to get darker and the nights set on earlier, and most people refused to go to that spot due to its bad energy. It wasn't until week 8 I returned. This week I was back in the kitchen. In the middle of the week, the 3 other kitchen members and I were out at the creek chilling out during the day, swimming and salamandering downstream with some kid-sized life jackets on. We're just messing around, cooling off, and enjoying life. We eventually floated down 3 Creek Crossing until the final spot you'd have to cross to get to the wretched meth lab pit. Now, this was the edge of the forest, or the park's forest. It was fenced off beyond this. The 4 of us were just chilling on some rocks by the water when I was looking around and observed an area. If you were facing the creek downstream, the out-tripping spot to hike off to was to your right. I looked up beyond the hill that was on the left and noticed a clearing off the trees when suddenly a thought popped in my mind. Could this have been the road the trailer got off of from the main road to get to that odd spot? Everything lined up. One of the others and I got up and went to explore, ducking beneath the fence. The other 2 stayed and were still chilling. Now what happened here, I'm still trying to explain. I'm still trying to wrap what happened around my brain. The best way I can describe this would be that I entered a time warp or maybe the Twilight Zone. I'll explain it as best as I can. The two of us got near the road. I wanted answers, especially from my last adventure, and needed to piece all the knowledge and evidence I had in my mind. We both were at the bottom of the road before it reached the shallow creek water. I'm not sure what it was. Maybe it was the call of the void. I was so curious for answers, the urge to explore overcame me, and I ran up this loose gravel road/hill, or whatever you want to call it, while my friend simply just walked up. I ran ahead of her, past where she could have seen me. At the top, there was this pathway that seemed to have come from nowhere and led to nowhere. But I was right. This secret road came off the main road. I didn't have enough time to dig deeper and turned around. I had heard my friend call my name once before. She seemed far away and just came up to the middle of the road. I answered, and she did not answer back. Thinking we were leaving as it was time to go, I traveled back down the road to see the other two, who were just chilling, begin to pick up and leave towards camp. I yelled over to them if my friend was with them, to which they did not respond. They couldn't hear me. Thinking she was, I began to walk back. Way behind me I heard yelling, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. I yelled back and got no answer. Still, I was facing the road that was a few feet in front of me, and saw my friend come down the road, thinking I had been hiding and pranking her. I had not. I was confused, and so was she. She told me that she went up the road and had called my name about 3 times, and heard no answer. She heard me call out the first time and continued up the path to see if I was up there, but I was gone. Only a few seconds later, she heard me calling her name again, but this time I was in a much different location at the bottom of the road. She had thought I left her to head back. Now, here's what I think happened. I think we entered something dimensional that warped time. This may not sound offsetting, but if you think about it, we would have seen each other as she was coming up to look for me, and as I was heading back down to leave. We both felt like we were there for an hour, when it had only really been 5 minutes. Both of us swear we weren't pranking each other, and I do believe her. I don't know what happened, and I apologize if this explanation does not make sense, as she explains it much better than I do. But we entered some kind of Twilight Zone. I still don't know what to call it. We went back and talked to some of the older staff about it, and they agreed it was off-putting. No one thought we were making up lies. The next night, I brought a group of people to head over to the out-tripping spot. This was our last week and our last chance to do so. The one who I had gone with before was the boy, as I just felt the need that he should be brought along. For the most part, it was a group of 7 who mostly just wanted to mess around. We hiked over the offsetting path beyond the field and began yelling and screaming songs to ease up the tension. You know, dumb things like Queen and the Canadian national anthem. One of the people who came with us had experienced this out-tripping spot when it was still in use. We'll call him Jay. We came to the fork in the pathway, and the experienced one, Jay, stopped in his tracks by the fire pit. It was where the old meth lab should have been, but it was gone. Where did it, and where could it have disappeared to? We still don't know. It was too dark, and we didn't have enough time to continue exploring, so we turned back on this eerie path. Perhaps one of the dumbest decision-makers of the group ran off ahead, making scary noises or animal noises, or whatever, to hide and scare us. He did just that when we all caught up to him, but just then the fence directly beside me made multiple noises, and the one that went ahead to scare us saw something of a 4-foot stature jump the fence and run off into the woods. Perhaps it was a deer, but considering that I was sensing bad energy from it, I think otherwise. I had logged all of the experiences I had every time I went to explore this area. We got back to the camp pretty freaked out. Needless to say, we weren't going back anytime soon. This was a Wednesday night. Friday was our last night at camp. While meal prepping for the last dinner, one of the senior staff girls walked into the kitchen. She was pretty spiritual, and she said she felt the urge to come into the kitchen to help. I asked her about the Twilight Zone experience to see if she could shine any light onto the situation, and she told me it was funny I asked, as she had been having her own spiritual situations. After a big discussion about the whole summer and our experiences, she told me she sensed I was spiritual. There's no way to describe this, other than being able to sense if people or things have good or bad energy. Like I said earlier, I was the only one who had sensed the bad energy at the out-tripping spot. Another senior staff member came in, and she too was pretty spiritual. She said the last time she was in that area, not by the actual out-tripping spot, but at a point where you would have creek crossed 3 times, she sensed something was wrong, and had all kids make their tarps face away from the direction of the meth lab and the out-tripping spot. This happened on the night I was playing with the Ouija board the past summer. After this chat, I felt the need to go up to the special campfire spot to think about life and be engulfed with the good energy. Once up there, I found Jay creating a firewood pile that would be used for that night's closing campfire. I agreed and went up to find some sticks. Don't ask me why, but I felt the urge to take my shoes off. The forest was pretty soft with moss, and if you walked carefully, you wouldn't get hurt. I went up and grabbed some sticks near the hill where it went up, and I saw a somewhat mini pathway. I followed it and kept losing it at some points, but it eventually led to a normal pathway. Nothing like a dirt hiking path, but when you walk through tall grass for a while with people and it creates a trail. Something like that. I kept following it until I got to the top of a very steep hill, and followed it until it led to a clearing. The pathway did keep going beyond this, and I know for a fact it hadn't been used for a really long time, and I had no idea where it went or led to. But I had the urge to stop there, and I yelled out asking for answers and saying I was here, and if life wanted to tell me something, now was the chance. I sat down and nothing happened. A few minutes passed, so I got up and started to return. Heading back down was painful as there were sticks digging into my feet that I somehow didn't feel the first time. I felt not like I was being followed, but as if something was there in my presence. I'm still not sure what. I found an old blue electrical wire in the ground and tried to pull it up. I don't know how it got there, considering we were in the middle of the woods with nothing around us except a hiking trail loop. I gave up and went back down to the camp for dinner. And this is where the experience ends. Nothing else happened after this. I still feel the need to get answers. We deep cleaned the camp the next day after the campers went home, and I drove off with 3 others to drop them off at their homes. As I drove by the secret meth lab road turnoff where I experienced the time warp, I said out loud that something bad was going to happen. I just got more uneasy and felt bad vibes as I got closer to it. But once we passed it, everything felt fine. I'd been told before that those who seek it will not find it, so perhaps that's why I never got the answers while exploring the pathway beyond the campfire. So, this is my experience. Until next summer, I guess. The only thing I know, or I feel, there is a form of dark entity in those woods that I feel drawn to explore and discover. I'm unsure if it's trying to hurt me, or what its intentions are, or what it wants me to know. So, thinking about this experience, I thought about it. I read this and then thought about it, and then narrated it, recorded it, thought about it some more. Obviously, it's in Canada because they were singing the Canadian national anthem. I'm wondering if it's some sort of, that area is some sort of joint government HARP area or DARPA project. Obviously, there's something strange going on there. It seems like the government had set up shop there and then rather quickly broken down shop and tried to clean up their mess as best as possible. Once again, what is that dark entity and what does it want? Is there some sort of underground base there? All right, folks, I hope you all enjoyed this middle of the night or early morning bonus upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you all. I'd like to thank you for supporting the channel. It is your support, after all, that helps the channel to continue to grow and go, and honestly, what gives people a place to share their experiences, ideas, theories, judgment and ridicule free, just simply treated with the respect that we all deserve. Thank you. Everyone, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real. These events are real. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for answers, and God bless.